Thursday's episode of Days of Our Lives may not be built around one huge public explosion, but that may be exactly what makes it so dangerous. Because this is the kind of episode where pressure starts building in several places at once. Not loud enough to destroy everything immediately, but strong enough to push multiple characters closer to choices they may not be able to take back. So while Thursday may not deliver one headline shock, it could still be one of the week's most pivotal episodes. Because on Days of Our Lives, chaos does not always begin with a scream. Sometimes it begins with a conversation, a strategy, a growing bond, or one person deciding they are done waiting for the truth. Let's begin with Leo and Javi, because this may be one of Thursday's most emotionally exposed storylines. Javi presses Leo for answers, and that instantly changes the emotional temperature of the scene. This is not a conversation built on nostalgia, softness, or romantic possibility. It feels more like a reckoning. Javi seems to have reached the point where mixed signals are no longer enough, and that matters because Leo has spent a long time surviving on ambiguity. Leo is very good at keeping feelings in motion without ever fully pinning them down. He can be charming, evasive, emotionally expressive, and still somehow avoid saying the one thing that would actually define where he stands. But a tactic like that only works when the other person is still willing to wait. Javi no longer sounds willing to wait. Because the question is not simply whether Leo still cares about Javi. The deeper question is whether Leo can finally translate emotion into commitment before indecision becomes its own answer. Javi pressing him suggests that he is exhausted by uncertainty. Exhausted by being pulled back into Leo's orbit without ever knowing whether Leo is truly prepared to stand still and mean what he says. If Leo pauses too long, softens the truth, or tries to emotionally blur the moment, Javi may hear that as confirmation that nothing has really changed. And that is often how soaps land their most painful scenes, not through screaming, but through the terrible clarity of realizing someone still cannot meet you where you need them to. So Thursday may not just test Leo's feelings. It may test whether he can finally speak them in a way that matters before the chance disappears. From there, the episode shifts into a more controlled kind of danger with Kate and Xander. A strategy session between those two is never casual. Even when the scene looks measured on the surface, there is usually something far more volatile underneath, because both characters think in terms of leverage, timing, and survival. They do not sit down together unless the situation already feels serious enough to require calculation. But the most important detail may not be the plan itself. It may be the condition Xander is in while making it. He is not entering this conversation emotionally clear or detached. Sarah's growing connection with Brady is already getting under his skin, and that kind of hurt can reshape decision-making in ways a character may not even recognize. Strategy becomes more dangerous when it is mixed with jealousy, pride, and the fear of losing control. And Kate is exactly the kind of person who could push that energy into something sharper. She does not calm chaos. She organizes it. If she and Xander are working through their next move, then this may not just be about solving a problem. It may be about positioning themselves before someone else gains the upper hand. In Salem, that kind of thinking often starts sounding practical right before it turns personal. Because strategy in a soap is often less revealing for its content than for its emotional motive. If Xander is already hurting, then whatever he helps set in motion here may not be driven by reason alone. It may be driven by humiliation, possessiveness, and the urgent need to feel powerful somewhere while his personal life is slipping beyond him. And plans born from that mindset tend to become dangerous very fast. As manipulation and emotional pressure build elsewhere, Johnny and Chanel appear to be dealing with a quieter but increasingly important problem. Johnny frustrates Chanel. That sounds simple on paper, but frustration is rarely simple inside a marriage. Frustration usually appears after disappointment has repeated itself enough times that patience starts wearing thin. It is the feeling that one conversation did not fix it, one apology did not fix it, and one more uncomfortable moment is now landing on top of everything that came before. Johnny may be distracted by demerit pressure, family expectations, or the complications tied to his current position, but external stress only explains so much. The deeper issue is how that pressure is beginning to show up between them. If Chanel keeps feeling frustrated rather than reassured, then the marriage may be moving into a more dangerous phase, one where the outside world is no longer just affecting them indirectly. It is starting to shape the emotional atmosphere inside their relationship. And that changes everything. Because a couple can survive a lot when both people still feel emotionally connected against the outside storm. But once one partner begins to feel consistently unheard, while the other keeps reacting instead of addressing the real issue, the tone shifts. Small moments stop feeling small. They start to feel like proof. Proof that something is off. Proof that the disconnect is no longer temporary. This may not be their loudest argument or their most dramatic confrontation. But it could quietly confirm that the tension between Johnny and Chanel is no longer just circumstantial. It may be becoming patterned. And once frustration becomes a pattern rather than an exception, the relationship usually gets much harder to steady. So Thursday may matter not because everything falls apart, but because it may show that the emotional cracks are no longer random, they are starting to repeat. Then there is Brady and Sarah, and their Thursday material may be some of the episode's quietest, but also some of its most consequential. The spoiler says they spend quality time together, which on the surface sounds harmless. Maybe even comforting. But in Days of Our Lives, those softer scenes often matter precisely because they do not look threatening at first. They create emotional movement before anyone inside the story is ready to name it. Brady and Sarah do not need a dramatic confession to complicate things. They do not need to cross a visible line right away. All they really need is ease. If they are beginning to relax around each other, lean on each other naturally, and find that being together feels lighter than being apart, then that bond can deepen faster than either of them expects. Emotional intimacy rarely announces itself when it starts. It usually arrives disguised as comfort. And comfort can be incredibly persuasive. Because something that feels safe also feels justifiable. It does not look reckless. It does not look romantic. It looks like support, but that is often how the most disruptive connections begin, not with one reckless act, but with repeated moments of relief that slowly shift where a character feels most understood. If Sarah begins instinctively turning to Brady for steadiness, then the real shift may not be romantic at first. It may be emotional, and once trust starts relocating emotionally, everything else tends to follow later. By the time someone realizes that a friendship has started carrying deeper weight, the dynamic is often already much harder to undo. And of course, none of this is happening in isolation. Xander is already feeling the strain of what he sees growing between them. So every warm moment Brady and Sarah share may be building two storylines at once. One rooted in comfort and one rooted in jealousy. That is what gives these scenes their real tension. The softness between Brady and Sarah may be directly feeding instability somewhere else. So Thursday's quality time may look gentle on the outside, but underneath, it may be building the kind of emotional triangle that starts quietly and ends painfully. And finally, we get what may be the darkest and most dangerous shift of the episode. Kristen lets Sophia in on her devious plan, and that detail matters immediately because it changes the nature of the threat. This is no longer just Kristen being angry, bitter, or impulsive. The moment she starts bringing someone else into the scheme, revenge stops being an emotional reaction and starts becoming an operation. A solo revenge plot can still be unstable. But a shared revenge plot is often worse because now the anger is being reinforced instead of contained. Kristen is not just carrying her own motive anymore. She is giving Sophia access to the plan, and in doing so, she is creating a partnership built on resentment, purpose, and mutual damage. Once two people begin feeding the same vendetta, the chance of restraint usually drops fast. Because targeting Johnny as a way to hurt EJ is already cruel in a very deliberate way. It is not just about revenge against one man. It is about weaponizing family ties and making the suffering spread. That means the scheme is emotional by design. It is meant to wound where it will hurt most. And once Sophia becomes part of that framework, the danger increases because she brings her own emotions, her own agenda, and her own capacity for reckless choices. Kristen has experience, ruthlessness, and the patience to build damage strategically. Sophia may bring urgency, volatility, and the willingness to push things faster than they should go. Put those energies together, and the plan may stop being precise very quickly. What begins as targeted revenge can easily expand into collateral damage once both people become more invested in winning than controlling the cost. Because once revenge becomes collaborative, it rarely stays clean. The target widens, emotions override proportion, and people who were never supposed to be central to the plot suddenly become casualties anyway. In Salem, that is usually the moment a threat stops feeling theoretical and starts feeling immediate. So Thursday may not just show Kristen plotting. It may show the exact point where her revenge transforms into something bigger, colder, and much harder to stop before it detonates. So overall, Thursday, April 16 looks like an episode where pressure intensifies across almost every major storyline. Javi may force Leo into an honesty he is not ready to give. Kate and Xander may shape a plan that carries more emotional instability than either of them wants to acknowledge. Johnny may keep frustrating Chanel in ways that suggest their marriage is under deeper strain than it appears. Brady and Sarah may move closer through comfort, even as that growing connection pushes Xander toward a more dangerous emotional edge. And Kristen may take her revenge mission to another level by bringing Sophia further into the operation. What makes Thursday so compelling is that none of these stories need one massive twist to feel important. They already feel important because of momentum. Because each one seems to be moving closer to a point where turning back may no longer be easy. And on days of our lives, that is usually when the real chaos begins.